Bigfoot, one of those creatures that needs no introduction. Just about everyone has heard the story about Bigfoot. Whether or not you believe those stories, however, is just as divisive a topic as politics. If you're a believer, there's no room for skepticism. And if you're a non-believer, you think anybody who believes is crazy. The thing is, there are things of this world that we cannot explain, where truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. If you're an avid outdoors person, you've likely run across structures such as the ones you've just seen. Believers would have you think that those structures were constructed by Bigfoot, whereas those who don't believe would fall back on simple explanations such as the wind and the forces of gravity. Regardless of which side you're on, it is hard to refute that some of these structures look like they've been built by someone or something.
Hey sightseers, we're back on the hunt for Bigfoot. That's right, we're out in the woods today searching for clues for this elusive creature. And why, you might ask? Earlier today I was walking Ty and discovered something rather interesting in the realm of Bigfoot sightings. Don't believe me? Stick around and watch the video. As you probably can tell, this is a cedar swamp, which is typical Bigfoot habitat, supposedly. I had gotten some flack with the first video I did in my research of Bigfoot that I didn't get off the path or off the trail. And so that's what I'm doing today, is I'm just walking into the woods. Of course, I'm right off the road because that's where I saw that structure initially, was when I was walking alongside the road. So I'm just gonna walk in and see what I can see. I mean, just because we're in an area that's populated with people doesn't necessarily mean that Bigfoot's not gonna be out here somewhere. And to think if Bigfoot exists, that he or she, let's be equal opportunity there, that he or she isn't going to dwell among people is, I think, kind of naive, in that man has pretty much infiltrated every part of the earth. I don't care if we're talking the North Pole, the South Pole, the hugest mountains in the world like Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Everest. Man's been there, and you'll find signs of man there too, I'm sure, with litter and things. So to say that I'm not going to run into Bigfoot because I'm in the woods, you know, close to people, I think is kind of unrealistic if you look at it from that perspective anyways.
The flip side of the coin is that more and more wildlife is turning up in urbanized areas. The reason for that, of course, is the amount of deforestation that occurs on a daily basis, which makes it all the more likely that Bigfoot would be sighted in an urbanized area if he exists.
I was going to walk in a ways. I'm not sure how far I'll actually walk in. I'm not exactly dressed to be tramping through a swamp. I need to get myself some rubber boots or something. But this will have to do for now. I don't know if you can tell, but the ground I'm walking on is really kind of spongy. Oh, you just have to be careful where you step. It's totally cool to see this first signs of spring coming up in the forest floor. You can see the purple flowers springing up, and that curly kind of grass. You can see the tree that's fallen over. I mean, that's obvious. That was done by a windstorm of some sort. Unlike this tree here that's fallen. Those are obviously things that happen in nature. But the other structure, to me, that's not something that happens normally in nature. At least not that structured.
Structured is probably not the correct word for it. What I mean is that the logs have been purposefully placed there versus just appearing randomly from acts of nature.
If I could get back over there, I think there's a mound that kind of runs along there, a high mound to keep my feet dry if I can get over there. I think I need to reevaluate my path because this is as far as I'm going to get over here. It looks like I might be able to get over there if I go this way.
Little did I know that changing directions would result in a surprise encounter.
Oh my god. Okay, you just... What you didn't see is I almost stepped on a snake. Let's see if I can get in closer. He's in the water. You see him? He's definitely agitated because you could see his little red tongue flickering in and out. I'm such a baby. But there he goes. Alright, now that I got myself all freaked out because I almost stepped on a snake, I'm thinking maybe I will get a grip. Get a grip, because what's a grass snake gonna do? It ain't gonna hurt me. So, and I'm like, what, 10 feet from the road? So really, if I start screaming, I'm pretty sure the neighbors will hear me, for sure.
Since the ground around me is getting mucky, I decide to play balance beams so I can get a closer look at another structure. This one appears to be a product of nature's forces.
So if I had to make an educated guess as to whether or not this was placed here or if this is deadfall, my thought is this is deadfall because it just looks like the top of a tree that busted off fell against this other tree that's here. I was out walking earlier and noticed the structure. And I find it highly unusual being that it's just right off the road and we are in a semi-residential area, but yet there's a structure that someone or something put up. What's the purpose of the structure? Is it to warn others that there's a road, that they gotta be careful to cross the road? Is it to designate that there is a water source close by? Because obviously it's all wet down here. We had a lot of rain recently, and normally it is a bit swampy in this area, but if you walk far enough out, you're gonna hit the lake. So is that why the structure is here? You know, I don't know. You know, what's the purpose of it? Those are all things that are crossing my mind as I'm looking at it. We'll take a walk over by it. I'm pretty sure it was put there on purpose and not just the product of a windstorm. You can see how they've been carefully placed together. That looks like it's some sort of marking system using one dead semi-dead tree and multiple pieces off of other dead trees. There's a number of structures in this area that are obviously the product of falling trees, just deadfall. You know, there's no doubt about it, like this for example. So again, the question is, who or what put this structure here? Was it Bigfoot?
Or could there be another more unearthly explanation for it?
I don't know how many of you are aware of this. This area was at one time inhabited by the Native Americans, and actually there is a few effigy mounds that are in this area. They aren't marked on a map because they have found that when they mark places like that, unfortunately, people come and decide to do things like desecrate the area by digging it up, stealing artifacts and whatnot. So here they've elected to not mark them, other than to give you, I think, a few coordinates to give you a general idea of where the effigy mounds are located. But there are two of them for sure real close to this area, like real close. I mean, within probably half a mile is how close they are. One thing I learned from my research of the Bigfoot and what people were leaving in the comments section off that video is that some Native American tribes believe Bigfoot or Sasquatch to actually be some sort of spirit. So keeping that in mind, I find it interesting that that structure was placed in an area very close to what would be former Native American hunting grounds. So I think that's some sort of deer trail going in, because it's all trampled down. And if you look in the mud, you can see evidence that some sort of wildlife was standing there, and my guess would be a deer based on the shape and size of it. It goes all the way back in that way. I've always found this part of the woods to be more spiritual, in the sense that when you look into it, it always has this aura or glow to it. And I'm not talking like I'm seeing weird things or anything. It's just the way the sunlight dances off the leaves, off of the trees, the way the wind blows when you're in here, that makes me wonder how close we are to the effigy or burial mounds, in that maybe this was one of the spiritual places that the Native Americans used. Now, I don't know that for sure. I'm just giving you my thoughts on that, my perspective. The other thing I've noticed about this particular spot is that if you listen, you can hear the trees talking. What I mean is, if you listen closely, you can hear the trees rubbing against each other, and they make a very eerie sound. And if you're not accustomed to that and you hear it, it's like, what was that? Oh my goodness, check out this crazy fungi growing on the side of this tree. It just goes all the way up. Is that parasitic or what?
Aside from discovering some interesting things out here in nature, we really didn't find any clues that would indicate what created that structure. I'd like to propose a theory, one that involves a more spiritual aspect to all this. Perhaps what we're looking for doesn't have a physical body here on Earth. Again, this is just a theory, just a hypothesis.
Well, it seems we're losing sunlight. The weather forecast is forecasting thunderstorms for this afternoon. So I'm going to head back, head out of the woods, and maybe next time we'll be able to find other clues for Bigfoot.
Then again, I could be wrong.
See? Bigfoot really does exist!